The courtroom fell silent as my own son stared right through me. His expensive suit gleamed under the fluorescent lights while my weathered hands trembled against my walking cane. My father doesn't have the mental capacity to manage his affairs anymore, Matthew announced to the judge, his voice cold and clinical. I'm only trying to protect what will rightfully be mine. In that moment, I realized I'd raised a stranger wearing my son's face. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you're listening from. My name is George Thompson, and I never thought I'd be telling this story. Never imagined I'd be sitting across from my only child in a courtroom, watching him try to strip away my dignity along with everything I owned. But sometimes, the people we sacrifice everything for become the ones who hurt us most deeply. I became a widower at 40. Cancer took my Sarah quickly, too quickly for me to process what single fatherhood would mean for a simple mechanic with grease permanently embedded under his fingernails. Our son Matthew was only 12 then, a quiet boy who loved books more than the cars I fixed in our small-town garage. Those early days after Sarah died were a blur of grief and responsibility. I'd collapse into bed each night with the scent of motor oil still clinging to my skin, wondering if I was doing right by our boy. You need to think about his future, George, my sister-in-law Diane told me one Sunday after church. Sarah would want him to go to college, to have opportunities. I remember nodding, my coffee cooling between my calloused hands. I know, I said. I'm putting away what I can. That became my mantra for the next decade, putting away what I could. I took every extra shift at Jackson's auto shop, eventually buying the place when old man Jackson retired. I packed Matthew's lunches, attended his parent-teacher conferences alone, and learned to iron his dress shirts for debate tournaments. His grades were exceptional, his ambition even more so. Dad, I got accepted to State University, he announced his senior year, waving the letter, pre-law program. I still remember how my chest swelled with pride, how I splurged on a bottle of sparkling cider to celebrate. That night, I couldn't sleep, mentally calculating tuition costs against the education fund I'd been feeding for years, knowing it wouldn't be enough. The next day, I took out a second mortgage on our house. You don't need to worry about the costs, I told him. Just focus on your studies. Matthew thrived at university. Each time he came home, he seemed to stand a little taller, speak a little differently. He joined clubs with fancy Greek letters and made friends whose parents were lawyers and doctors. I noticed how he'd wince slightly when introducing me to his classmates, how his eyes would dart to my worn jeans and flannel shirts. Dad, couldn't you wear something nicer when you pick me up? He asked once, his voice low as students streamed past us on campus. I looked down at my clothes, clean but admittedly faded. These are my nice clothes, son. He nodded quickly. Never mind, it's fine. But it wasn't fine. Something was shifting between us, a distance growing with every semester. I told myself it was normal, that all kids pull away as they find themselves. Still, I kept working those long hours, kept sending money for books and housing and the occasional emergency that always seemed to involve impressing someone important. Law school came next. More loans, more overtime. My back started giving me trouble, but I never mentioned it in our increasingly brief phone calls. What was physical pain compared to seeing my boy succeed? I attended his graduation alone, clapping until my hands hurt, as he accepted his diploma in his perfectly tailored suit. I'm proud of you, son, I said afterward, going in for a hug that turned awkward when he extended his hand instead. Thanks for coming, Dad, he replied, already scanning the crowd. Oh, there's Professor Whitmore. I need to speak with him about a potential position. We'll catch up at dinner, okay? We never really did catch up at that dinner. Matthew was too busy introducing me to Amanda, the daughter of a prominent attorney in the capital. She was beautiful, sharp, and looked at me with the kind of polite smile that never quite reached her eyes. Mr. Thompson, Matthew tells me you're a mechanic, she said, carefully cutting her overpriced fish into precise bites. How fascinating. I could feel my son tensing beside her. Dad's owned his own shop for years, he said quickly, steering the conversation elsewhere. They married 6 months later in a ceremony that cost more than my annual income. I wrote the check without complaint, smiling through photos where I clearly didn't belong. Matthew had made it. He was starting at Amanda's father's firm, moving into a house in the suburbs with columns out front and marble countertops inside. I told myself that every sacrifice had been worth it. Our phone calls dwindled to holidays and birthdays. My invitations to visit were met with vague promises about their busy schedules. When I did visit once, driving 3 hours to their neighborhood of manicured lawns, I caught Amanda hastily hiding away the coffee mug I'd brought as a housewarming gift before their friends arrived for dinner. It doesn't really match our aesthetic, Matthew explained later, not quite meeting my eyes. The tremors started in my right hand a year later. Small at first, just enough to notice when trying to turn a wrench or button my shirt. Then came the stiffness in my legs, the occasional shuffle in my walk. Dr. Parker's expression was grave when he delivered the diagnosis. Early onset Parkinson's, he said gently. We'll start you on medication, but you should prepare for some changes in your life, George. I sat in my truck for an hour after that appointment, watching rain streak down the windshield and wondering how to tell Matthew. When I finally called, his secretary put me on hold for so long I nearly hung up. Dad, I've only got a minute, he said when he finally came on the line. We're preparing for a big case. I've got Parkinson's, I said plainly. The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. What? Are you sure? Doctor confirmed it today, early stages. Jesus, Dad. He sounded genuinely shaken. What does this mean? Do you need care or something? Not yet. But I might need some help sorting out medical directives, legal stuff. Thought maybe you could help with that part, being a lawyer and all. Of course, he said quickly. Amanda and I will come down this weekend. We'll get everything in order. They arrived Saturday morning in their sleek black car, Matthew with a briefcase full of documents, Amanda with a tight smile and designer sunglasses she never removed, even inside my modest home. The place looks cozy, she commented, perching on the edge of my worn couch like she might catch something. Matthew spread papers across my kitchen table, talking rapidly about powers of attorney, living wills, and asset protection. I tried to follow along, nodding when it seemed appropriate, signing where he pointed. This one transfers the house to my name, he explained, sliding another document forward. It's just for protection, Dad. If you need specialized care later, this ensures your assets aren't seized for medical costs. It made sense when he explained it. He was the lawyer, after all. I trusted him. I signed that one too. They left before dinner, citing the long drive back. Matthew hugged me briefly at the door, something he hadn't done in years. Don't worry about anything, Dad. I'll take care of everything. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was my son, my only family, the person I'd given everything for. The first sign that something was wrong came 3 weeks later when I received mail addressed to Matthew at my house. Curious, I opened it. A property tax assessment for my home, now listed under his name. I called him immediately. Oh, that's just part of the asset protection strategy, he said dismissively. Nothing to worry about. Then came a notice from my bank about changes to my accounts. When I visited the branch, the manager looked uncomfortable. Mr. Thompson, it appears your son has been added as a co-signer with full access privileges, she explained. Did you authorize this? I hadn't, not knowingly, but maybe it was part of what I'd signed. I called Matthew again, a knot forming in my stomach. It's standard procedure, Dad, he assured me, in case you become incapacitated and bills need to be paid. His explanations always sounded reasonable, but something felt off. I started paying closer attention to the mail, keeping copies of everything. I noticed withdrawals from my accounts I hadn't made, small at first, then larger. When I confronted Matthew, his excuses became increasingly impatient. "Dad, managing your affairs is complicated. I'm doing you a favor here." The final blow came on a Tuesday morning. A courier delivered legal papers. Matthew was filing for guardianship, claiming I was mentally incompetent to manage my affairs due to advancing neurodegenerative disease. The document detailed my confusion, poor decision-making, and inability to maintain basic self-care, all blatant lies. I sat at my kitchen table, papers spread before me, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. The son I'd raised, the boy I'd sacrificed everything for, was trying to legally erase me while I was still breathing. The betrayal burned so deeply I could barely draw breath. That night, I called the only person I could think of, Peter Williams, a lawyer I knew from church who'd helped with my will years earlier. "George, this is serious," Peter said after I explained everything. "He's essentially trying to take control of your life and assets. But there's something they don't know, isn't there?" I nodded, even though he couldn't see me over the phone. "The updated will we prepared 2 years ago. Matthew doesn't know about the foundation." "Exactly." Peter's voice was grim but determined. "And he doesn't know about the independent medical evaluation we had done, documenting your mental competence. I think it's time we use both." The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. I barely slept, barely ate. The betrayal consumed me, turning decades of love and sacrifice into ash. How had the sweet boy who once made me Father's Day cards turned into this stranger in expensive suits, plotting to take everything I had? On the morning of the hearing, I dressed in my best clothes, a simple suit I'd bought for Sarah's funeral and hadn't worn since. I took extra medication to control my tremors and used my cane more for dignity than necessity. Peter met me outside the courthouse, his kind eyes full of concern. "Ready, George?" I nodded, straightening my shoulders, as I'll ever be. Walking into that courtroom was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Matthew sat at the plaintiff's table with Amanda beside him, both impeccably dressed. He didn't look at me as I made my way to the defense table, though I saw Amanda whisper something in his ear. The judge, an older woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, reviewed the documents before her, occasionally glancing up at Matthew, then at me. "Mr. Thompson, the younger," she clarified. "Please explain why you believe your father requires guardianship." Matthew stood, straightening his tie. "Your Honor, my father has been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. His cognitive abilities are declining rapidly. He's making poor financial decisions, forgetting to pay bills, and can't properly care for himself. As his only family, I'm concerned for his well-being and financial security." "I see," the judge said, turning to me. "Mr. Thompson, the elder, how do you respond to these claims?" I rose slowly, gripping my cane. "Your Honor, I have Parkinson's, that's true, but my mind is clear. I don't forget to pay bills. I maintain my home and myself just fine. What my son really wants is control of my assets before I'm gone." The judge nodded thoughtfully. "Mr. Williams, as counsel for the elder Mr. Thompson, do you have evidence to counter these claims of incapacity?" Peter stood. "We do, Your Honor. First, an independent medical evaluation conducted just 6 weeks ago, certifying Mr. Thompson's full cognitive capacity despite his physical diagnosis." He submitted the documents, and I watched Matthew's face pale slightly as the judge reviewed them. "Furthermore," Peter continued, "we have bank records showing suspicious withdrawals made by the younger Mr. Thompson from his father's accounts, as well as documentation of a property transfer that Mr. Thompson Sr. was misled into signing." The judge frowned, looking at Matthew. "Is this true, Counselor?" Matthew cleared his throat. "Your Honor, those actions were taken to protect my father's assets. He agreed to the transfers." "Under false pretenses," I interjected, unable to contain myself. "You told me it was to protect me from medical costs, not to take everything for yourself." The judge held up her hand. "Mr. Williams, do you have anything else to add?" Peter nodded, producing a sealed envelope. "Yes, Your Honor. We'd like to submit Mr. Thompson's last will and testament, properly executed and notarized 2 years ago, well before any symptoms of Parkinson's manifested. The judge broke the seal and read silently. Her eyebrows rose slightly before she looked up at Matthew. Mr. Thompson, were you aware of the contents of your father's will? Matthew shifted uncomfortably. No, Your Honor. I assumed as his only heir that everything would come to you, the judge finished for him. She turned to me. Mr. Thompson, would you like to explain your will to the court? I stood again, my eyes fixed on my son. 2 years ago, I established the Helping Hands Foundation, designed to provide educational scholarships to low-income students in our community. My house, my business, and the majority of my financial assets are designated for this foundation upon my death. Peter Williams is named as executor and board member. Matthew's face contorted with shock. What? That's absurd. He can't just... I can and I did, I said quietly. Every penny I earned was spent on you, Matthew. Your education, your wedding, your first house down payment. I gave you your inheritance while I was alive. What's left is mine to do with as I choose. The courtroom fell silent. Amanda was whispering furiously to Matthew, who looked like he'd been slapped. Your Honor, Matthew began, his voice strained. Clearly this proves my father's judgment is impaired. Giving away his estate to strangers instead of his family. Actually, the judge interrupted, making charitable provisions is quite common and in no way indicates mental incapacity. Mr. Williams, was this will executed with proper witnesses and mental capacity verification? Yes, Your Honor. Full documentation is attached. The judge nodded, then turned to Matthew with a stern expression. Based on the evidence presented, I'm denying your petition for guardianship. Furthermore, I'm ordering a freeze on all accounts where you've been added without proper authorization, pending investigation of possible financial exploitation. Matthew stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. He's my father. That money should be mine. The judge's gaze hardened. Mr. Thompson, control yourself, or I'll hold you in contempt. This hearing is about your father's capacity, not your inheritance expectations. As Matthew sank back into his chair, I finally found my voice. Son, I said, the word feeling strange on my tongue, I gave you everything I could. I worked my fingers to the bone so you could have opportunities I never had. But somewhere along the way, you decided I was just a bank account, an embarrassment, and now an obstacle. You've made your choice clear. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see heads nodding in the gallery, sympathetic glances thrown my way. Matthew wouldn't look at me, his jaw clenched tight as he stared at the table. This court is adjourned, the judge announced, her gavel striking with finality. Outside the courtroom, Peter placed a steadying hand on my shoulder. You did well, George. He can't touch you now. I nodded, watching through the glass doors as Matthew and Amanda hurried to their car, faces tight with anger and embarrassment. I never thought it would come to this, I admitted. Where did I go wrong with him? You didn't, Peter assured me. Some people just choose greed over gratitude. That's not on you. In the months that followed, my life changed in ways I hadn't expected. With Peter's help, I sold my house and bought a small, manageable cottage near the community college, where our foundation would provide scholarships. The shop was sold to my longtime employee, who kept me on as a consultant, fewer hours, less physical strain, but still keeping my hands busy and my mind sharp. The foundation became my new purpose. I met with potential scholarship recipients, young people with dreams bigger than their bank accounts. Their gratitude and determination reminded me of a younger Matthew before money and status poisoned his perspective. Mr. Thompson, I can't thank you enough, said Elena, our first scholarship recipient, her eyes bright with tears. Nobody in my family has ever gone to college. This changes everything for us. Those moments healed something in me. Every story shared, every grateful handshake, helped fade the pain of Matthew's betrayal. He tried to contest the will, of course, filed appeals, claimed undue influence, even attempted to paint Peter as a manipulative figure who'd taken advantage of a sick old man. None of it stuck. The medical evaluations, properly executed documents, and my own clear testimony shut down every attempt. News of the case spread through our small community. Matthew's reputation in the legal circle suffered. Trying to declare your mentally competent father incompetent for financial gain doesn't play well with colleagues or clients. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he and Amanda separated 6 months later, their carefully constructed life together crumbling under financial pressure and public scrutiny. One rainy Tuesday, almost a year after the hearing, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Matthew standing there, thinner than I remembered, the expensive suit replaced by jeans and a worn jacket. "Dad," he said, his voice uncertain. "Can I come in?" I hesitated, my hand gripping the doorframe. Part of me wanted to shut the door, to make him feel a fraction of the rejection I'd experienced, but another part, the part that had raised him, that had loved him unconditionally for decades, couldn't turn him away. 5 minutes, I said, stepping aside. He entered slowly, taking in the modest living room, with its comfortable furniture and walls, lined with photos of scholarship recipients. "Nice place," he offered. "It suits me," I replied, remaining standing. "What do you want, Matthew?" He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my heart ache. I came to apologize. Not that it changes anything," he added quickly. "What I did was unforgivable." "Yes, it was," I agreed. "Amanda's gone," he continued. "The firm asked me to resign. Turns out nobody wants a lawyer who tries to defraud his own father." He gave a bitter laugh. "I deserved it all. I got so caught up in the lifestyle, in what people thought. Somewhere along the way, I forgot who got me there." I studied his face, the dark circles under his eyes, the new lines etched by stress and regret. "Why are you really here, Matthew? Need money again?" He flinched as if I'd struck him. "No, God, no, I miss my dad. The dad who taught me to change oil and tie my shoes and believed in me more than I deserved." His voice broke. "I know I can't undo what I did. I know I probably destroyed any chance of us having a relationship again. But I needed you to know that I understand now what you did for me my whole life, and I'm sorry I threw it away." I sank into my chair, suddenly feeling every one of my years. "Apologies are easy, Matthew. Trust is what's broken here." "I know," he nodded, wiping at his eyes. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed to say it." We sat in silence for a long moment, the tick of the clock on the wall marking seconds that stretched between us like years. "There's a position open at the community college," I said finally, "teaching paralegal studies. The pay isn't much, but it's honest work. The foundation has some influence there." Matthew looked up, surprise clear on his face. "You'd do that? After everything?" "I'm not doing anything except mentioning an opportunity," I clarified. "What you do with it is up to you, just like it always has been." He nodded slowly. "Thank you. I don't deserve it." "No," I agreed. "You don't. But maybe that's the point of grace, getting what we don't deserve instead of what we do." He left shortly after, the gulf between us still vast, but perhaps with the faintest bridge beginning to form. I don't know if we'll ever repair what was broken. Some betrayals cut too deep leave scars too permanent. But I do know this. The foundation now helps dozens of students each year achieve dreams that would otherwise remain out of reach. My life, my work, my resources, they'll outlive me in ways I never imagined. As for Matthew, he took the teaching position, moved into a small apartment near the college, started over with humility I'd never seen in him before. We meet occasionally for coffee, our conversations careful but gradually thawing. He volunteers at foundation events, working quietly in the background without seeking recognition. The greatest irony is that in trying to take everything from me, Matthew lost everything himself. And in losing what I thought mattered, my son's affection, the legacy I'd planned, I found something more valuable: purpose beyond family, impact beyond bloodlines. Greed has a price. Sometimes it's measured in dollars, sometimes in relationships shattered beyond repair. But there's also a price for forgiveness. Not the cheap kind that pretends harm never happened, but the costly kind that acknowledges the wound while refusing to let it poison what remains. I don't know what the future holds for Matthew and me, but I know this: the foundation will continue growing, helping young people build lives with both skill and character. And perhaps that's the best legacy I could leave. Not just resources passed to the next generation, but values that might shape generations to come. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next story, just click on the box on the screen. Thank you so much for listening.